There are some people you'll never forget as long as you live. This week, we're going back to 1999. I was in 7th grade, and my primary mode of transportation was a school bus. I can remember many frosty mornings standing on a corner in my apartment complex, waiting for bus number 546 to lumber up to the curb. The door would creak open, and every day it was the same bus driver, an elderly black man with gray stubble, a denim Oxford, and a trucker cap. In my entire 2 years in middle school, I don't think he ever missed a day. I consider him an early mentor, and he taught me a lot about humility and how to deal with trolls. He's the subject of my sketchbook today. I'm Michael Laron, and this is the Writer's Journey podcast, where you get a window into the life of a working science fiction and fantasy author. I'm on a mission to go from nobody to bestseller, and I'm documenting every step of the way. Tune in every week as I share my progress and discover what inspires my books and how I write them. You can find the show notes for today's episode at michaellaron.com/podcast. This week, I'm reading a page from my writer's sketchbook. Hello and welcome to episode 23. Let me just start this week's sketchbook out by saying that I was bullied pretty bad. While I look back on my middle school days fondly, I can't look at them without feeling some pain either. And when I think about those days, the things that got me through the constant bullying and the teasing and the fights, it was the guidance of teachers and adults that ultimately believed in me and wanted to help me because they wanted to see kids succeed. I went to school with a lot of kids who thought they were invincible and they disrespected adults something awful. And when I say disrespect, I mean cursing, punching, and all kinds of other verbal and physical harm. It was tough to be a teacher in my middle school. There were many days when teachers ended up with black eyes for trying to bust up fights. My principal got assaulted in the parking lot one night after school. Not even the school buses were safe. Fights broke out there too, more times than I like to count. Which brings me to my bus driver, a man just doing his job in a hostile environment. No one ever knew the man's name, so everyone just called him Bus Driver. He had only one facial expression, and that was stone-faced, staring straight ahead. He looked like a man who'd had a life of quiet disappointment, probably because he was driving a school bus of rowdy kids who disrespected him every day. He wore the same thing every day, a denim Oxford and a trucker cap. He had a pot belly and a voice that reminded me of Bill Cosby. In fact, that's why kids made fun of him. Not a single day went by where someone in the back of the bus didn't bust out a Bill Cosby impersonation just to mock him. The kids mocked him for what he wore. They mocked him for being quiet, taunting him and trying to get him to talk, and he would just simply ignore them. He'd focus on driving the bus methodically through his serpentine route. He took a lot of crap, and he took it gracefully. 2 incidents forever made me a fan of this man. He was, at that point in my life, the only person I had seen who had been bullied more than me. Those kids terrorized him like you wouldn't believe, and as much as I hated to see it, seeing someone else being terrorized instead of me for a change was a welcome breather. Time for me to reflect on those long bus rides home. As is any nerdy kid's custom, I usually sat in the front of the bus directly behind him, and I'd stare wistfully out the window. One day he spoke to me. I don't know how or why, but he must have believed that I was the only kid on that bus that was worth talking to because he never spoke to anyone else. He was incredibly friendly to me. I thought he hated his life based on his facial expression, but when he spoke, he was actually very warm. "You're not like the other knuckleheads in the back of the bus," he told me. He'd ask me about my classes and how they were going. He'd ask about my family, and we'd have pleasant conversation. Hell, we even talked about philosophy and the ways of people. Near the end of my 8th grade year, he said something I'll never forget. He said, "You look like you're destined to go somewhere in life, wise beyond your years. The other kids here, they just talk and they don't know what they're talking about. You look like the kind of kid that gets all the facts and makes up your mind for yourself. That's going to take you a long way." I don't really remember the details of all of our conversations, but I'll never forget that. Here was a man I only spoke to for maybe 20 minutes a day, but I learned a lot from him. I connected with him in a way that I didn't with other adults. I viewed him as an elder, like my grandparents and great-grandparents. He believed in civility. He treated people with respect even if they disrespected you. He believed in jazz and its power to transform a person's life. He believed in doing a good job because that was the minimum of what was expected of you. He believed that as a black man, it was his responsibility to be a role model to other black people, especially the young pups, and he told me many times that I needed to pass that on. The second incident, I saw him break. Those kids broke him. I suppose one could only take so much before he snaps. It was just before summer vacation at the end of the day, and a kid got on the bus with a CD player. I didn't think anything of it as he passed, but soon the assistant principal ran onto the bus and called the boy's name. Turns out the kid's teacher had confiscated his CD player because he was listening to it in class, and he stole it out of his teacher's desk before he left for the day. The confrontation immediately turned into a shouting match, and the kid called the assistant principal all kinds of bad names. The bus driver sat silently as the encounter unfolded, eyeing the boy in the rearview mirror. Eventually, the assistant principal confiscated the CD player, and I don't remember why, but they let the kid ride the bus home. The whole way home, he was making passive-aggressive remarks about the principal, school, and life in general, and colorful words that I won't repeat. Anyway, the bus is driving down a busy street when the kid said something to the tune of, "Everybody in this school would be much better off without teachers treating school like slave day." Imagine that, but with more curse words. The bus screeched to a stop. Seriously, I didn't know a bus could stop that fast. The school driver put the bus in park in the middle of traffic, and he stood up. "What'd you say, boy?" he asked calmly. "It's a motherfucking slave day," the kid shouted. "Slave day?" the bus driver asked. "You don't know the meaning of slave day." And then the bus driver exploded. He lectured the entire bus on how insolent we were and how as black people that was a damn shame. He said a lot of slaves died so that we could be more than just 3/5 of a person and actually live in this society as free people. And predictably, the kid cursed him out. And the bus driver shut him up and got even madder. He pointed a finger at the kid and said a lot of people stood up and spoke out just so we could ride a bus in the first place. And here this kid was with his first world problems, man. Mad at the principal because the principal was just enforcing the rules. He opened the bus door, which led into the middle of traffic, told the boy to get the hell off his bus. Then he drove off, leaving that boy standing on the curb. I had never heard that bus so quiet. And if that wasn't enough, the bus driver then glanced at us with a harsh warning. "Any of you want to talk like that, I'll put you off my bus." And then he didn't say another word. Hope you liked that one. That bus driver was unforgettable, and he got in a lot of trouble for that incident. After all, he lost his composure and he endangered a child. After everything transpired, he told me that he almost lost his job over it, but he didn't seem to mind. A job's a job, and he could drive a bus in any school district, probably in one's better than mine. Many years later, when I was working in corporate America and took a stand for what I believed in and almost lost my own job as a result, I thought of him and his quiet confidence. Thanks for joining me this week. If you enjoyed the show, here are a couple ways to help a brother out. If you're listening to this on Anchor, favorite the show. If you're listening to this on a podcast app, do me a favor and write me a review and share it with your friends. You can, of course, visit my website and learn more about my work at michaellaron.com. If you have a question, send me a voice message on Anchor and you just might hear it on the show. Next week, I'll be going behind the scenes of my writing process. Until then, I leave you with a quote. If you would know strength and patience, welcome the company of trees. Hal Borland.